personal and a professional coach here in Forest Lake, and he will do a much more extensive introduction of himself. So, go ahead, Lance.
Good morning. Or good afternoon, sorry. I'm going to stand right here just so you know I'm videotaping this, and I'm going to I'm not caged, but I'm kind of caged because I want to make sure that I'm on this little video that I'm taking. Tell you a little bit of background about me and why I'm here. First of all, if you hear a funny word as I'm speaking, I was born and raised in England, and occasionally an English version of a word will slip back in. I grew up in high school over here, though. I lived in England until I was 8, moved to France for 3 years, and then moved to the United States. And as you can imagine, if you have kids at 11 years old, having different way of communicating, i.e. speaking English, even though it's in America. And I went to this beautiful school called Every Day I Need Attention, called Edina. And while I was there, it was always, how do I fit in? Because when I lived in France, I wanted to fit in as well, and I learned to speak French. That was easy. Coming here, I spoke the same language, I thought. I ended up in speech therapy because to speak American from English, I developed lazy speech and I started a lisp. So it was very funny. I went to speech therapy every day for 7th and 8th and 9th grade. At school, learning American. And at home, my parents were adamant that I talk properly on a reel-to-reel Revox into a microphone. And I did that for 3 years. All of this, why I tell you this, is I became very, very, very good at fitting in with the jocks, the burnouts, the geeks, the dweebs, the foreigners. My best friends were Guido Rieti from Italy, Prasanna Gunaratne from Sri Lanka, Serge Nepomniachtchi from France, and John Bell, the only black person in my grade and one of 4 in the entire school. And we were our own little group. And I wanted to be in the other groups. I played football, which then I had to figure out was called soccer. I swam, and I sang in choir. So I was in all of the weird groups and tried to fit into everything. Thus, going into college, went into psychology, of course, imagine that. And I went into sales. My father worked for Control Data. He was an engineer. He was computers. I wanted to go that way, as far away from Dad and the rest of my family as possible. And I became the sales guy that dropped out with 1 quarter left. I was in the military, completed my 5 years in the military, became the first citizen in my family. And during this whole time, I started in the restaurant business when I was 12 years old, washing dishes, and was in the restaurant business all the way up until about 10 years ago. And since then, I've now consulted for restaurants, done waitstaff trainings, wine trainings. I went into the wine business and learned how to communicate and teach. How many of you have been to the Renaissance Festival? Awesome. For 13 years, I was Lord Lester, the wine master of the Renaissance. And I had a blast. And I always thought I was an outgoing person until I did some personal training and development work in 2002. And in 2003, went back to the Renaissance Festival, and there were some people that would come and visit me because my show was about giving out free wine in those little tiny plastic pea cups. And people would come and get free wine. And some of the people, the street urchins, it was a great place for them to get a buzz 3 times during the show. And then go out and perform better, because that's the Renaissance Festival. And that year in 2003, they came up to me after the show and they said, "How are you, Lord Lester?" And I said, "Great." And they said, "What have you been up to?" And I said, "Doing the same thing, selling wine and liquor." And they said, "What else?" And I said, "Well, I'm dating somebody." "No, what else?" "Well, I went through this education called Landmark Education." And they both turned to each other and went, "Wow, yes, we knew it." And I'm like, whoa. And I had done this personal training and development work that actually had me remove this armor. Here I thought I was a great speaker, I taught wine classes, got my sommelier degree. I taught service training at restaurants. I was on the training staff with Green Mill for 3 years around the state. All this. And what was missing was the person, the emotional, the empath person in communication. And I'll share a little bit more about that as we get to the bottom of this page I left on your table. And they said that what was different was as I was speaking to people in my wild state, in my purple costume that looked like I had a skirt on with great boots. I mean, it was a big flower. I mean, I had a Broadway seamstress make me a costume because the wineries paid for it. It was great. I had a $1,000 costume, $1,000 boots, all paid for by the wineries over the course of the time I was there. Loved it. They said the difference was as I was speaking to people, as I was moving around the stage, I would connect with individuals. And I'd speak from my heart directly to them and get connected. As opposed to before, I was doing one of the old speaking tricks of looking about a foot above everybody and speaking to the wall and to the flag and to the back of the room, and never actually getting connected. And it was a complete shift, and they knew something had happened. And I got more and more interested in communication. I got more and more interested in coaching and dealing with people. From 2002 to 2012, I've coached over 5,000 people, ages 8 to 85, CEOs, dishwashers, all manners, from an hour of coaching to 14 years of coaching, because I still had a couple clients up until recently. And what I found was the number one thing that was missing in all my clients was their ability to communicate effectively in all of the arenas of communication. And I chose 5 of them. And you'll see those 5 in front of us. By the way, Ted, would you give me a 5-minute warning when you need to stop work? Leanne, thanks. And I've highlighted them here, and they are not numbered strategically. There is no number 1 on here, do this first, learn this first. I've put them in this order because it builds in a very good way from a speaker point of view for communicating. However, the importance level, if I was to tell you what I think is the most important in today's world, so you can listen for this as we go through all of these, is the last one, being in another person's world. Currently today, we live in a very self-serving, selfish world. It's all about me, I. You'll see that successful people in today's world live, thrive, generate, and are empathically touched to the last distinction on this page. Starting from the beginning, listening. The funnest thing that I like to tell people, we have 2 ears, 1 mouth. That's the basic rule. Listen twice as much as you talk. It's a great place to start. In reality, the way I look at it, if you're listening 4 times as much as you talk, a few things become present. You're not wasting words. You're speaking precise points. And you're speaking to the conversation that is actually going on between you and the other person or people. What do I mean by that? In the listening, how many of you know what the telephone exercise is? It is amazing. My favorite story is I had a group of 12 PhDs who all thought they were the bomb and they could handle this game because they had seen the itinerary. And I showed on my phone a sentence to the first person. They turned, and it wasn't that hard, it was 12 words, and they turned to the next person. By the time it got to the end, I was then able to take and transfer it up onto the PowerPoint. There was 1 word that was the same as the other 12. It was incredible. They all looked at each other, and you could see in one flash they were all blaming each other. Like, the person next to me, that's exactly what they told me. It was so funny. And it was in just that few people it changed. It was absolutely incredible. listening through filters of life, we all have them. There's age filters, there's youth filters, there's millennium filters. If I talk about a millennial, everybody has an exact idea of what I'm talking about. If I talk about a baby boomer, we all know what that is. What I mean by the filters of life is most easily demonstrated. If I say blue, because of the filters you have from your life experiences, the word blue coming out of my mouth with my tones, my look, everything about me, you hear red. And then we wonder why we can't communicate. It happens a lot between relationships. After a long period of time happens, these little dominoes pile up, and suddenly, bang, something happens. And in my business, one of the things I do is I go back and put all the dominoes back up and try and get to the source of where that first one fell. And it's amazing to find out what it is, because you start to see, you've had a filter your entire life, and it resides in the amygdala part of the brain, which has no timestamp. It's just there, and you react, and sometimes you don't even know how you react. And I could spend about an hour just talking about that little reaction from amygdala. We actually now, it's referred to as amygdala hijack. So when you see somebody that's in a conversation and they suddenly flip from being in good spirits to completely negative, they got an amygdala hijack. How do we know that that happens to people? Well, in the middle of a meeting, send a parent a text from school that says something that's in the middle of the classroom time they're supposed to be in class, not using their phone and texting. Immediately the parent is hijacked. Okay, does that explain that? Active listening. What you're doing now, active listening. How do you have that arise with people is make sure that what you're communicating to them, you are starting to see that they're responding to, and they're actively engaged in listening. Very, very powerful. A lot of techniques for this. Once again, here you could spend an hour creating this whole conversation around active listening. Being present. This one in today's society, the cell phone of today keeps people not present. Even if they put it on vibrate. Why? It vibrates, where's your attention? Immediately you go through a calendar of events in your head. Is it my kid? Is it my significant other? Am I in trouble? Did I forget something at work? That litany, I don't care how good you are, in that moment you have been hijacked away from whatever conversation you're in. And that takes you away from being present. Being present is a very, very active phenomenon. And it's something as a speaker that for us to develop that skill so that people actually listen and can learn and get value and want to listen and interact, so that everything that you say, every word, every pause, communicates something of value. Eye contact, body position, interactive listening, and a time clock watcher are good examples. If I'm in a conversation with you and I'm talking sideways to you, a lot of people feel threatened by that. Why? If you think about it, here I am in a fighting stance. Right? So there's to be actually faced towards the person, to be speaking to them. There's also energy that goes, we have a field of energy around us. And that field of energy, if it's sideways, it's projected away from the person, it's projected to something else, to a distraction, all of that. Yesterday's the past, tomorrow's the future, but today is a gift. That's why it's called the present. Author Bill Keene. Speaking. One of the things that you'll notice, I do not do this 100%. I try very hard to remove the ums, the ahs, the so's, you know, and the biggest one is but. My example, I love you, but. What are we waiting for? I don't care I don't care that you just told me you love me. I want to find out what the faults are, because that's all you're going to say next. Consider that every time you make a statement and you put but in there, you just lied. Maybe a little one, may even be a white one, but it's a lie. Why do I say that? In the next statement, you are going to give me a reason why that statement is now false. You're going to fill me with some excuse. The question I get asked a lot about this, just to give you a fun little tip. Well, Les, even when I'm saying something that doesn't seem related and I use the word but. Nope. How about however? Well, that's a fancy one. If you want to make a point, I love you. I wanted to talk about the dishes in the sink last night. If you put a break, a complete pause, a complete ending of that thought, it allows that person that you're speaking with to absorb and accept that piece of conversation that you gave to them. Volume. If you notice, I sometimes go a little fast, I slow down, I get loud, I get quiet. All of that impacts different people. If I were to yell right now, some people might go, wow, and be just surprised. Others might cower, wondering what's going to hit them, what's going on, what happened. That's the first place we go to with a yell. Most people don't, if somebody yells, don't go, oh wow, what success just happened? Who scored? That's not the default. Body language. When I did these and printed these up, it was 80 to 90% when I did my research and created this sheet. Recently, there are studies now that say 85 to 95% of our communication is nonverbal. We wonder why texting and email doesn't work. That's why. Context, body language, nonverbals do not travel in typed words between phones or computers. It is the kiss of death in a relationship of any kind to email thoughts and feelings and contextual conversation. In fact, the company that I worked for, it was forbidden to do any kind of coaching except scheduling for coaching by email or text. Does everybody understand that? Ever had an issue with a text that was misread? Crossed arms and legs. Ladies, I've got great news for you. Varicose veins, they have found that the #1 reason women get varicose veins in their calves is because they cross their legs and their knee pokes into the back of their calf. And other places behind the knee. Highly, highly recommended. If I came up here in front of you and stood like this and started speaking, how would that seem to you? A little closed off? Does he need to go to the bathroom? Now, some people say, well, I'm in a conversation with somebody that has their arms closed. Great. In Sales 101, Mr. Whitaker, you probably know this one. When you're sitting across the table from somebody, mirror them and break it up and do it in such a way that it has them follow you. I was such a strategic salesman when I was developing some of the classes that I taught as a sales manager. I had a set of eyeglasses that were expensive with clear lenses. And I would come into a meeting and sit down across the desk, and that person had glasses. And I would strategically take out my glasses and put them on to develop that body language of similarity. And then when I got connected and was closing the deal, I would take them off and lean forward. And there was a vulnerability and openness that happened from that. Just like if You see somebody with a tie, what are you thinking when they do this with a tie and they undo the top button? Relax. Yep, exactly. That's the way it is. So body language, nonverbals, big time, positive. Being in another person's world. Listen for what might be happening in the person's life. The easiest one is if they had a death in the family and they don't occur present. Find out, ask, employee, boss, doesn't matter. Ask them what's going on. Check in with somebody. Find out what's going on in their life. People buy from people they like. People do business with people they like. It's the easiest, cheapest way to get related is to be in another person's world and start to figure out why. Why are you there? Why are they there? And speak to that. Start getting responsible for what's going on in other people's world. Your world will alter. Every relationship you have will increase by 20 to 25% of a positive connection when you actually start to get responsible for what's going on over there in the conversation. It is the number one most powerful thing that you can do in sales, in relationships, both intimate, business, casual, and family. Find out what's going on over there. Be aware of all the first 4 points. Pay attention. Pay attention to somebody that's fidgeting, can't pay attention, looking at the clock, finding out what's going on. Ask, do you have another appointment to go to? Are you late? Is there something going on? Do we need to be aware of something? Do we need to take something into account in this meeting? Ask questions. Question, question, question. Find out what's going on. Why? If any of you want to look at some fun TED Talks on the computer, type in the word WHY and see the why, finding out somebody's why. I don't care what the business is. Why do you want to get healthy? Why do you want to lose weight? Why do you want to do this? Why do you want to do that? I recently lost 40 pounds and got certified as a health coach and now work at Lakes Area Health Clinic, formerly Ottomeyer Health Clinic, as a health coach. Why? Because that supports my game in staying healthy. Plus it contributes. It's a way that I can contribute to other people. And the first thing we do is find out why. Why do you want to get healthy? If you don't have a big enough reason to avoid having that macadamia white chocolate cookie, you are not going to avoid it. Don't assume anything. It makes an A** of you and me. Why communication? Intimacy. This is the biggest tip I'll give you. If you look at intimacy, that word, and you want intimacy in your relationships, pretend that it's into me you see. And take a look at that. I'll be here later. Thank you very much for your attention. I hope you got some value out of today's talk.